Okay, let's start with some equipment. We are going to need a Bioprac, a laptop, some cables, some electrodes, and 2 technicians.
So this is an MP35 Bioprac. You can see on the front it has 4 channels, so each one of these can take a different set of leads or electrodes. On the back you can see that there is a port for a USB connector, which is how we connect to the laptop. There's a plug point for the plug, the on-off switch, and then some of these other connectors we're not going to be using today, but they are there, where this can plug into lots of different types of hardware. So that's your basic Bioprac. If you're doing any Bioprac work in your final year, one of these is what you'll be using. We also have a laptop. It's a standard laptop that's got Windows 10 on it. Next we've got the USB connectors. So as you've seen, just like a USB connector from the Bioprac to the laptop. We've got 2 different types of electrode leads here. So the ones we're using today are these ones, the black, white and red. So the black, white and red electrode leads on either side. You can see that one of them has got a metal connector, on the other side it doesn't. So you just need to make sure that the metal connector is on the side where the electrode is. Otherwise you won't get any conductivity from the electrode into the electrode cable. So of the black, white and red electrode cables, one of them will be collecting the actual data from the electrode, one will be acting as a reference point, and one will be acting as a ground. Now the other type of electrode, sometimes when using a Bioprac you'll be collecting what's called GSR, galvanic skin response. So you might have a couple of electrodes on fingers.
So galvanic skin response is essentially sweating, and these electrodes that are on the fingers can also collect heart rate, so you can measure someone's pulse with these as well. And so that means that with a couple of these electrode leads and the EG, you can create a mini lie detector
as well. And then finally you've got different types of electrodes. These circular ones are generally the ones that are used for EEG type practicals when using a Bioprac. So it's just a sticky bit of plastic with a metal electrode point on one side, and on the other this green circle in the middle, which has electrolyte gel in it. So it's just an extra conductive bit of gel that will aid the conductivity from your scalp through this and then into the electrode cables. These more rectangular ones are usually better for application to the earlobes or on fingers. So normally we wouldn't have these on heads at all. Where the circle ones aren't as good for fingers or for earlobes, these rectangular ones seem to work better, but they do exactly the same thing, so you can use either.
Okay, so now we're setting up the Bioprac ready for the experiment. So you want to start off by plugging in channel 1, and just remember to screw in the lead just to make sure it doesn't fall out in the middle of recording data. Plug in the USB in the back of the Bioprac. Plug in the plug at the back of the Bioprac. Plug in the plug and turn the switch on. And then turn on the Bioprac at the back, and you'll see the power light has come on. And then when you plug in the USB to the laptop, you'll see the busy light flickers for a few seconds, then goes solid, and then as soon as it turns off, you can start adding the electrodes to your participant's head. For today's experiment, we want 1 electrode on the left temple, another electrode on the mastoid bone, so that's just behind the ear, and then a final electrode on the earlobe. And then just extra squeeze that on there, Ellie, just make sure it doesn't fall off. And then we can see here Ellie's going to start attaching the electrodes. So again, she's just showing you there's metal on one side and not metal on the other. So when she's attaching them, the red one needs to go to the left temple. That's where we're going to get the most EEG activity. And then you can see here, attaching the electrodes, sometimes the participant will have to hold up the electrode cable. It's quite heavy and it will peel off the electrodes. So sometimes you might need to wrap it around their shoulders, or some of the electrode cables come with a little clip which you can then pin to people's tops or jackets if they're wearing them. And you can see After that, Ellie's just quite easily able to attach them to each electrode. Once your participant is sitting comfortably, you can open your laptop and start the Bioprac software, and so long as everything is connected and you've had that busy flickering light, you should see something that looks like this. And then today we're going to open a graph file, and then we're going to open a file on disk, and then just click OK. So this is where we've made a unique experiment for the Biopracs. If you're collecting data for your final year project, you'll probably be using one of the pre-made experiments, but just for this particular instance we created a unique version. When you open a Bioprac experiment, you'll see this kind of setup. So don't worry about most of the buttons, we're not going to be using any of them. All we really need to see is in the center of the screen here, this is where all of our data is going to be. And then just before we start recording with the Bioprac, we are going to ask our participant to fill in their age, their sex, and then answer this question. So how alert are you currently feeling on a scale of 0 to 400, where 0 is not at all alert and 400 is as alert as you could possibly be? Once those questions are filled in, we can click on Start in the top left of the Bioprac. You can see here the data collection has started. This is my brainwaves. And once we're ready to start the first minute of data collection, we'll press Escape on our laptop keyboard, and it will add in something called an event marker, just circled there in red. So here we're going to have our participant sit for 1 minute, and then at the end of that 1 minute we'll press Escape again. I've of course cut the video, I don't expect you to sit and watch for a whole minute.
2 very boring minutes later.
After the chewing is complete, we want our participants to rate themselves from 0 to 400 again on their alertness. We have started the Bioprac collection again, and we've added in the event marker. So this will just measure the second minute of me chewing. Again, I've just cut it just for time purposes, and I've added in a second marker. So now we can easily see in our data the first minute, which is between 2 markers, and the second minute, which is between 2 markers. If we want to start looking at our data, we want to click that plus minus sign and then go down to Selection Palette. And then here, this extra box that's arrived on screen, we want to add in on the left side at the start of our recording, and on the right hand side we want to add in the end of our recording. Here I found the start of recording 1, so you can see that's at 14 seconds, and I'm just dragging right until I see that second event marker at the top, that little triangle, which we can expect to be about 60 seconds after the 14-second mark. So this will just be our baseline for how alert my brain is when we are sitting at rest. We're just sitting comfortably with a couple of electrodes plugged to our head. And I'll just find that second event marker there. And so now you can see that we've selected from 14 seconds to 68 seconds. It's not exactly 1 minute, but that shouldn't matter. We can now just cross off that selection palette, and next we want to click on Analysis, so that's at the top left, and then click on Power Spectral Density, and then here we can just click OK in this first box. Okay, so now we have Power Spectral Density open. We are interested in finding the mean values between 13 Hz and 30 Hz. So that's like the beta wave of my brain, or of all human brain activity. And we're looking to see the difference between time 1 recording and time 2. So we open the selection palette again, and as I've said, we want between 13 and 30 Hz. Now here, I put in the left hand side first, which is just for the quirks of Bioprac, not how you do it. You need to put in the right hand side first. So there you can see 13 to 30. That's the beta wave of my brain. And we're interested in the mean value here. You can see there's one really big spike there, which is unusual. Perhaps Ellie kicked me under the table just to try and wake me up a little bit. And then you can see here I'm just changing some of the channel values. I've selected frequency, but we're going to change that to mean. And then there we go, there's the mean. And then in the little box next to the mean, we can see that the mean equals 0.002 microvolts squared hertz. So that's something else that we need to write down for our EEG beta power. We'll record that in the same place where we recorded my alertness scale. And now that we've done this, we can increase the digits of precision. So we want a bit more of a precise record of that beta power. So in actual fact, we're at 0.00235. You never know, it might make all the difference. So we're just going to record that on our piece of paper so that we can measure that against how alert I was after chewing for 2 minutes. Okay, and so now that we've recorded that, we can just get rid of this selection palette, this power spectral density. We can then move to the time 2 recordings. That's after I've finished chewing, so that black line there denotes that there was a pause in recording. You can see the first event marker here. I can just select and then start to drag over to the right. If I open the selection palette again, I can then select that event marker. The event marker is just there to visually aid you to see where the different points are. You can't select it. As I said, it's just there as a visual cue as to where the recording started or thereabouts, which is why we're not overly bothered about how it not being exactly 60 seconds. So from 76, you can see I'm just scrolling to the right and selecting all of this second time point, 1 minute. And I'll get there any second now to the final event marker. And this section will just be repeating what we've done with power spectral density and obtaining a beta power for time 1, but now doing it for time 2. So there's the final event marker. Get rid of the selection palette. Click on analysis, power spectral density, click OK. And then if we wanted to, we could start by clicking the cog, changing the units of precision up to 5 just to get that extra level of detail. Change the channel to display the means, then open the selection palette for power spectral density. In the right hand side, add 30. In the left hand side, we want 13. Again, that's the beta wave of my brain. And now we can look at the mean, and we can see now it's 0.0047 microvolts squared of hertz. And with that, we can start looking at the differences between time 1 and time 2 data. And then when we're done, we can just cross off this power spectral density and cross off from Bioprac. We don't need any of this anymore as we've got all the data. Now we're going to move over to analysis.